12,000 years ago, the Earth went through this cataclysmic reset, and the majority of humanity was wiped out. The points of critical shift in the phases in the Yuga cycle correlate with the tropical zodiac. In ancient times, we were telepathic. The ancient wisdom of indigenous people and shamans is that we can not only shift timelines, but we're not bound by this shape. We ended up blocking off and losing those capacities. But all of that's starting to come back now. I really see this period from 2025 to 2032 as the critical transition time. It has the possibility of being this evolutionary leap, this dramatic shift into higher consciousness. It means all the forms on which we build our society will need to change to reflect the new cosmology of the Aquarian age. What we're needing to do to get into that higher consciousness is, this is such a critical time for us in the 24,000 year precessional cycle. And I've done interviews with Bibhu Dev Misra, who's correlated that with the Yuga cycle and how we are exiting out of the Kali Yuga as of March 20, 2025, coming out of this 5,000 to 6,000 year period of being in our lowest level of consciousness. The Yuga cycle is that understanding that we go through periods of ascending consciousness and descending consciousness. We're emerging now out of that time of forgetting, getting caught in separation and disconnection from our true selves, from source, from each other. And we're now in this accelerating time of change and transition. My hope is, and belief, is that if enough of us awaken and remember who we truly are, come back into connection with source, with our soul selves, then we will move into this new way of being with the earth as she's in her own transformation process. This is the message that I received, in some of the shamanic training that I did with Karo shamans. The dimensional divide is about what can happen if enough of us don't awaken to shift the collective consciousness. Then I think we'll truly be on a path of dividing as humanity, with some of us on this path of moving into higher consciousness, moving into the fifth dimensional reality. And those who choose not to be in that process of awakening and transformation will then likely go through this time of shift on the planet in third dimensional reality, which is this time of cataclysmic reset, which happened 12,000 years ago. So we hit these very significant times in the precession cycle at the midpoint and the ending of one, beginning of a new one, which is where we are right now. So 12,000 years ago, the Earth went through this cataclysmic reset, and the majority of humanity was wiped out. And then we reconfigured and have moved into this evolutionary process across the last 12,000 years, the descending cycle. And now we're at another critical turning point, which I think is a karmic choice point. And we each can choose. Do we awaken, heal, transform, move into higher consciousness? Or do we resist that, cling to the patterns of the past, and then go through a cataclysmic reset?
I think it's profound that you use the word karmic choice point. You mentioned there that the last 12,000 years have been a descending cycle. Does that imply that we're sort of starting to ascend on the other side of this?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it has the possibility of being this evolutionary leap, this dramatic shift into higher consciousness. And I really see this next 7-year period from 2025 to 2032 as the critical choice point and the critical transition time.
So just to wind back a little bit, because I find this absolutely fascinating. I've been waiting to ask this question, is the precessional cycles and the Vedic awareness from someone like Bibaldev Misra of the ages that they carry. Do they fit snugly one into another, or are they two separate cycles that are talking, but they just happen to coincide at certain points?
That's exactly what the book that I'm working on, that I mentioned to you before we got on the
Ah, here we go.
I
Sorry.
really believe they are, Bibhu Dev Misra in his book tried to see how they correlate. I actually think both are 24,000 year cycles, and they do correlate. And what you see with the Yuga cycles are we go through these phases with the ascending, descending cycle. And interestingly enough, and I think this is fascinating, the points of critical shift in the phases in the Yuga cycle correlate with, in the tropical zodiac precessional cycle, the fixed signs. So that would be Taurus, Scorpio, Leo, Aquarius. So we have these four fixed stars, the royal stars in those fixed signs that have been so important across time. And interestingly enough, those signs, and when we're in the age, moving into the age of Leo, we started into that descending cycle. Now that we're moving into the age of Aquarius, we're moving into the ascending cycle.
I see the ages of the Vedic cycles almost as like an elliptical orbit around this source point, which is not centered in it. I don't know if I'm describing this very well, but it's almost like there's a source point here, and there's an elliptical orbit that humanity is kind of going through, and we're closest to the light, and then over here we're furthest from the light, and we sort of then turn around, right? And I'm picturing your fixed signs as you're describing them mapped out on that orbit as well. Really, really fascinating to contemplate.
What I love about what you're saying is I believe that our precessional cycle and movement through these different ages is related to our being a part of a binary star system. 80% of the stars in our galaxy are binary stars. I believe the sun is in a binary star relationship with the star Sirius. And that is, we go through it, the movement is like you're looking at a figure eight as the two are intersecting and moving around each other. And I do believe that it's when we move away from Sirius that we move into our descending consciousness. As we approach our binary star, we remember what we have forgotten and come back into higher consciousness.
I'm looking for, yeah, this is really exciting. So interestingly about that, because it flips a lot of things on its head, because if the sun is no longer the center of our thinking, but it's actually in this dual relationship with Sirius, I mean, that implies a lot of things. Intuitively, I want to actually ask you more about what is the frequency of Sirius, because you actually look at the celestial bodies in a very unique kind of way from my understanding, which I absolutely love, the mythology. What does Sirius embody for you, and what are the qualities of Sirius that make you call it out as our binary star system partner?
There are many reasons scientifically I think it's our binary star, but in terms of the mythology, Sirius has been so honored in ancient cultures across thousands of years. The Dogon people in Africa honored Sirius and had insights into Sirius A and Sirius B and felt like they had been mentored and taught by beings coming from Sirius. In ancient Egypt, Sirius and Orion are seen as Isis and Osiris, the leaders who guide the people and how to live in harmony and in balance. And the myth of Isis and Osiris involves the way in which Osiris's brother Set, who represents chaos, gets caught in ego consciousness, tries to destroy his brother, cutting him up into pieces and scattering him. And Isis keeps restoring him, healing him, bringing him back. But it's such a powerful story about this struggle in our own human evolution between the part of us that wants to live in right balance, right harmony, Osiris, and the other aspect of humanity when we get caught in ego consciousness, Set, and in chaos and a longing for control or dominance. And Sirius, the star, our binary star, is guiding us through this journey, continually healing us, helping us come back into remembrance of who we are, helping us come back into higher consciousness, just as Isis in this story is healing Osiris, putting him back together again, breathing life back into him to restore him and bring him back into wholeness.
It's really interesting to hear you say that, because what's coming up in mind is I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Ramayana, which is an old Indian. Well, we see it as our history rather than a myth. But anyway, there's a whole conversation to be had there about the myth and story. But they talk about how the Ramayana is actually the story of Ram, and actually, when you start speaking to some scholars, they say it's actually the story of Sita. And I'm sure it's actually the story of both of them. Ram has to save Sita from Ravana, and that's like Diwali every year. It's the festival of light that's celebrated around having that in our awareness. And it's interesting to feel into that, because I think living in the sort of patriarchal structures that we do, the sort of hero's journey is often, it's a hero's journey. Like, no one talks about the heroine's journey. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's oftentimes the sign of the times that we're in. I mean, with the, like, even just looking at this conversation where we are, but like at the 2025 to 2032, and as you're bringing in this awareness of Sirius at the moment, do you see there being a shift at the moment in terms of these patriarchal structures as well? Is that one of the things that's shifting in the time of this great divide?
Absolutely. So what's really interesting, and why I think the precessional cycle and understanding it is so important, is it gives us an accurate sense of our human history and evolution of consciousness. When we look at how our history is taught, we're told that we came from hunter-gatherers and have evolved across the last 5,000 to 6,000 years to being where we are today as modern humans, and that it's been this linear evolution into more and more advanced ways of being. When you really understand and explore the ancient cultures that we have remnants of from 10, 12,000 years ago, who clearly had a higher understanding of technology, of consciousness, of spirituality than we can even conceive of, we realize that whole understanding of history is not accurate. And then we realize this last, in understanding the meaning of the Yuga cycle, we realize this last 5,000 to 6,000 years has been the time of lowest consciousness, and the only time in the 24,000 year precessional cycle when we get caught in a power over paradigm and in patriarchy. Prior to that, it's not a flip. It's not about matriarchy. It's matrilineal cultures, but it's an honoring of the balance of the sacred masculine and the sacred feminine. And that circles back to, I love what you referred to earlier about how it changes our cosmology to realize that the sun is in a dance with a binary star, Sirius. It so speaks to, this is not our solar hero in the middle of our solar system with everyone circling around him. This is our sun in this dance in relationship with Sirius, evolving as we're in this dynamic in interconnectedness with each other.
Inspired souls, I wanted to take a moment to thank all of you that are subscribed to this podcast. Everything you see around here is powered and empowered by your subscription to this channel. Thank you so much for your incredible love and support to enable everything you see around here into possibility. To all of you that haven't yet subscribed, please do take a moment. As I'm saying the word subscribe, the button below is lighting up in the colors of the Inspired Evolution. Please hit that subscribe button, hit the bell notification icon, join the movement, supporting love, wisdom, and positivity like this around the planet. And if you want to go even deeper, then you can join us at the Inspired Evolution Circle. That's inspiredevolution.com/circle. I'll put a link to it in the description below. Join the community. We connect every week online over Zoom, chatting, conversing about these topics and subject matters. Guests come on once a month to do their Q&As directly with the audience, and so much more. If you want to go deeper and join the community, you can do so by following the link inspiredevolution.com/circle. It is such an honor to be part of this community. Thank you. Well, I can even feel when you're saying that, just how Aquarian the revelation is as you're sharing it, right? And maybe you can speak to that, because it's less me. It's more we, right? And I guess we can take a look around at the world at the way that it is, and maybe I should give you some bandwidth to speak to this. Just the sort of, I wish there was a better word than neuroses that comes from like believing that everything orbits around the individual, and how much healing is available for us when we start to come into, well, the shamanistic worldview. Like, it's all about right relation. It's all about right relation.
Well, that's, I think, part of what I believe led us into the Kali Yuga, led us into this time of lower level of consciousness, is there were some earth crises and earth changes and climate changes around.
Is this the cataclysm you're referring to 12,000 years ago?
That was a huge, major cataclysm that basically wiped out most of the life on the planet. But 6,000 years ago, there was the likelihood of comet activity that struck the planet. There were droughts. There was severe climate crises that led people into, I think, trauma and a survival mentality. And then if you're caught in trauma, you're caught in that sense of fear and need to cope by being in survival mode and trying to be in control. And I think that's what led us into the increasing power over paradigms. Conquer or be conquered. Strive to get what you can in order to survive and have your family, your community survive. But it led us into a sense of separation and disconnection from each other, from the earth, from our connection with the cosmos, that has led us into trauma. And I think we've been caught in these trauma patterns now for the last 5,000 years in particular, which is why there's a major theme in what I talk about in my work, that we need to heal and get out of these trauma patterns and out of this survival of the fittest mentality, to remember we're interconnected with all that is. Everything around us is sacred and conscious. We are one with the earth, the sky, the cosmos. And Elizabeth Sahtouris, dear friend, who was an evolution biologist, talks about how the species on the planet start from this immature mentality of survival of the fittest. As they mature and evolve, they come to realize, oh, we actually thrive when we honor our interconnectedness and interdependence with all that is. So the species around us on the planet right now have learned that and matured. We as humans are still locked into this survival of the fittest mentality, conquer or be conquered, that is creating massive pain, suffering, and destruction of each other and the planet.
Can I thread what you've just shared back into what you called before the karmic choice point? Is that at the heart of what you were saying before? Does that dovetail into really the choice that we have at this point and why you're referring to it as a karmic choice point?
Absolutely, because I think what we're seeing on the planet right now are those who are trying to cling to those old paradigms, trying to assert even more power over, even more control. And yet at the same time, we're seeing so many awakening, realizing there's more to life than this. This isn't how we're meant to live. And I'm just, it's so heartening to me to, and I know you probably experienced this with your YouTube community, to realize how many people are longing to live a different way and to come from a more spiritual way of being and to live from the heart. And that's the divide that's happening. Those of us who are on that path and those who are clinging to the old paradigms, which creates a lot of chaos and a lot of confusion and a lot of crisis.
And it's, I mean, safe to say that that's what, when we look outside, that's really a lot of what we see at the moment as well. There is a lot of uncertainty, which actually does take quite the toll on people's mental health. There's a lot of chaos, a lot of confusion. I mean, I sometimes, and I know, you know, you mentioned the community, like we have these weekly gatherings that we do and we catch up online, and everybody's still in, I don't know what the inverse of awe is, maybe shock, but it's not really shock. It's just, it's incredulous to us that like war still happens. It's like, huh? Like, you know, you can feel it. There's a bunch of people that are like getting together. It's like, I can't believe we're still running outdating software apps and stuff like this that, you know, no longer serve us. But there is a lot of chaos and a lot of certainty at this time.
Well, and I think that really gets to the heart of it. There are those who are clinging to those old paradigms, but those of us who are feeling these shifts and being guided into this ascending consciousness are seeing how these old patterns are so destructive and really have come out of that sense of separation and lower level of consciousness. And I believe that as we remember who we are and have a sense of this larger cycle that we've been in and what we're capable of being, then we so long to move into those new forms and feel the energies of the earth and the cosmos, the galactic beings, the inner earth beings, all supporting us in this death rebirth into a radically new way of being. And I sometimes, you know, as an astrologer, I think I just live in wonder with how the energies of the earth and the movement of the planets and stars are so lovingly trying to show us the way and guide us through this transition and help us to trust and have faith in what's unfolding. But those who are resisting it are creating the chaos and the uncertainty and the destruction that's really still harming so many on the planet.
Yeah, a couple of points about that. One of the things I didn't realize how grounding astrology can be for others, and I still kind of see the irony in that. I'm not sure if it's ironic, but like in my mind, it's like you're looking at orbits, you know, and you're looking at constellations, you're looking at the movement of things, and yet it helps you like ground into the nature of the time that you're in, and it can be so therapeutic just to be like, this is what's going on at large at the moment, you know, and it's not to dissociate from your stuff, but to sort of give your stuff a home to live in. And like, I noticed this with my coaching work is many people can work through most of the things they've got to work through as long as there's a light at the end of the tunnel, right? Obviously there's a couple of things in there like, you know, the end of a life, but do you know what I mean? Most of the stuff, you know, as long as there's a light at the end of the tunnel, people's resilience naturally like shifts because it's like, I know I only need to wear this for a certain period of time. And I think as you start tuning into astrology, and maybe I think that's why more and more people are potentially coming to astrology at this time as well, because it is so chaotic, and it provides this celestial order for people to sort of fall into. Would you agree to that, actually, before I go on to my next one?
I do agree with that. I think it's also, as we're coming out of this sense of separation, back into this remembrance that we are interconnected with all that is, then, and it's not that the movement of the planets or the stars are controlling us. They are mirroring to us or guiding us in the energies that we're experiencing here on the earth. It is that Hermetic principle, as above, so below. As it is within us, so it is outside of us. As it is outside of us, so it is within us. So the movements of the planets and stars are mirroring back to us what we're going through in this time and reminding us that we're not alone, and then guiding us in how to be more awake and aware of this process that we're in.
This process, this transition that we're currently going through, I mean, you mentioned 2025, 2032, but we're actually going through quite a large shift, and I will get back to 2025, 2032 in a moment. The transitions are like you've been talking to timescales like 6,000, 12,000 years, right? So these are, and then the current transition, I think the reason I wanted to ask that is because you've also, like 1993, you heard a voice to basically leave your current life or you're going to die. Like that's like quite the thing to sort of experience. But also the transition window that we're in is quite, it might seem like a generation of people or a couple of generations of people, but it still is a transition. But I'm just trying to get some scale around the transition and speak to that many people would have been feeling some of this already for quite a bit of time. Yeah. And more people are going to be coming online if we're feeling a bit alone in our shifts and transitions as well. And then I'd love to dive into like 1993 and that voice that you heard. Yeah.
Well, just before getting into that, I think time is really accelerating. Time is speeding up. And I really believe that part of why this 7-year period is such a critical choice point is that the way the energies are guiding us through this transition, whatever is up to be dealt with is on the surface right now. So I see this and I hear this with the people that I work with. Issues that may have been dormant or kind of kept in check for years are now right on the surface.
I hate to butt in, but I kind of have this with my awareness. It's like almost like all your karmic residue is just effervescing up to the surface. It's like it's this real bubbly. I don't want to say it like that, but it really is that at this time, isn't it? Sorry for interrupting.
That's a much more poetic way of putting it. Yes, exactly. But I think that's true individually and collectively. We're seeing in the collective consciousness all the shadow aspects of humanity up right now. And it's like it's all playing out in an extreme way, I think, to support us in seeing it, healing it, clearing it. And certainly in our individual lives, that's what we're experiencing. But it's also, it means that we have this capacity to heal in a much more rapid way. When I was working as a clinical psychologist back in the 90s, there was the sense that we slog through some of these core childhood issues and traumas, and it takes us years to work it through. And now I see how people are just rapidly healing, clearing, moving more fully into their true selves. It's beautiful to see. And I think that's related to these energies that are helping us move through this time of transition and transmutation.
Inspired souls, living beings, if you're feeling out of alignment or feeling like the life that you're living right now isn't the life of your highest calling, then this is why I offer one-to-one mentoring and coaching. As you can tell, supporting people through spiritual mentorship and entrepreneurship coaching is at the heart of my deepest passions and desires, and everything you see around here at the Inspired Evolution is my calling. And it'd be an incredible gift to support you in finding yours. This is the work that I've been doing through mentoring and conscious masterminding for the last decade. You don't just have to take my word for it. This is how people all over the world have transformed through this work.
I don't even recognize myself from 3 years ago. I don't recognize myself from a year ago. All of these things that I've been wanting to manifest in my life, I have them now.
This entire year has been complete transformation.
He is literally just there to put wind in your sails.
He really seems to love his work and his clients. He's going to squeeze all the juice out of life and encourage his clients to do the same.
Amrit definitely delivered more than I expected. Was able to steer it in the right way, the way my soul needed to hear. I think that's what makes him so unique as a coach.
He's wonderful. He really can help to do wonders with your project. Go for it.
So if any of that resonates and you feel inspired to evolve and you're ready to live fully into alignment to create the life that is absolutely abundant, free and prosperous and aligned to your purpose, then book in a call with me. amritsandhu.com/call. That's amritsandhu, amritsandhu.com/call, CALL. I'll put a link in the description below. I'd love to hear from you, support you on your journey further if it's in alignment. I'll see you there. The time speeding up piece, sorry, I just wanted to zoom a light in on that just before because that's really interesting to be talking to yourself who has the awareness of like astrological cycles, and it does feel like time is speeding up. Like honestly, in my mind, it's March and it's almost July. Like it's, like I'm struggling with that a little bit in 2025, actually keeping up with the actual just dates on the calendar. And also there's this, in the shamanistic worldview, like they actually have this ability to work with time, which I don't fully completely understand, but I'd love for you to speak to if you could.
Well, I do think that ancient wisdom and shamanic understanding is that we can shift timelines. We're not bound by linear time. But I also believe that the ancient wisdom of indigenous people and shamans is that ability to shapeshift, to also realize we can not only move through time and not be bound by third dimensional linear time, but we're not bound by this shape. We can become an eagle or become a tree or become a whale and experience the myriad expressions of cosmic consciousness. We can dance in time and form. But I think that that's some of what we lost connection with. But all of that, I believe, will start coming back, that awareness, that remembrance, that ability, as the Peruvian shamans would say, to become Homo luminous ones, beings of light. So I think that we're in that shift. But what we're needing to do to get into that higher consciousness is clear the heavy energies that weigh us down and bind us in these out of balance patterns from the past.
1993. What happened to you?
So, and as I was mentioning to you before we got on the recording, we've both had those critical crisis points. For me, I was 37. I was well established in my practice as a clinical psychologist. And I did love that work. It was in alignment with my path until I started both to feel the constraints of traditional psychology and felt like there's got to be more. There have to be other ways of supporting people in healing. And I also realized I was getting more and more out of balance in my own life in terms of getting burnt out, working too hard, not really listening to my deeper self. And it was out of that I had that profound mystical experience. And hearing that voice within me, you need to leave your life as you've known it, or you will die. And I knew with every fiber of my being that was true. But what it meant was then across the next 6 months, I'm dismantling my practice. I'm selling my home. I'm preparing to move across the country to, I don't know quite what. And it was a very challenging time. And there were times I was just overcome with anxiety because I'm leaving everything that seems safe and secure and what I've established and built. And you can imagine that so many of my colleagues and friends were like, what are you doing? And in the midst of that, and I love how we're guided and supported by the cosmos through signs and synchronicities. But I would, when I was really most overwhelmed and anxious, I would go out in this little garden behind my home, and over again, this little hummingbird would come and hover right in front of me. And I felt it was saying, it's going to be okay, trust, stay on your path. And the day that I actually moved and left California to go to the East Coast, the hummingbird came one more time. She hovered right in front of me and then flew east. And I didn't realize till years later, when I was studying with the Peruvian shamans, that they see the meaning of the hummingbird as follow your path of destiny with joy. So in this amazing way, this hummingbird was saying, you're on your path. Stay in trust. Stay in that joy of being in alignment with your soul self and that inner knowing, and dare to be in the mystery, to be in the not knowing. It really taught me the meaning of being in the liminal times, which is where the most transformation and healing happens, where we leave one way of being and we don't just suddenly move into a new way of being. We go through this transition of dissolution and reconfiguration, like the caterpillar going into the chrysalis to become the butterfly. And it was really in that liminal time that I went through the most time of transformation and healing.
Heather, can I lean into all your background and ask a question there about trust? Because I think many people may even hear a call, but learning to trust the call and trust the voice. I mean, it was just a voice, you know, and then trusting the signs, trusting the hummingbird, trusting your path, not knowing what's next and still walking out the door. I mean, there's this, and there's a deeper part to the question I'd like to ask is, first of all, how do we invite levels of that level of trust in your experience? And then also, I think some people project onto some people that are learning to trust as being naive and intentionally burying their head in the sand. I don't know if you've come across that narrative. It's like, oh, you're just going to trust that things are going to work out, are they?
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like, how convenient. You know, so there's this real piece around trust. Yeah, your thoughts, your insights?
Those are such good questions. I think the key, and I know you know this also, is when we have one of those moments of awakening, it's like we're hearing the call of our soul self. And what I realized in that whole transition time, my mind would freak out. My personality self would go into panic attacks. My soul self never wavered. My heart and that inner knowing never had doubts. I knew in the depth of my being, this is listening to my soul self. This is in alignment with what I'm meant to do. And then it's not that naive trust, well, everything's going to work out fine. I mean, I went through 7 years of being in a transition time. But as you have said, those challenges become gifts. We grow and deepen and evolve and discover more things about ourselves and grow in strength and trust. The trust then is when we come from the heart and not from the mind, and discern the difference between the voice of our soul self and the voice of our personality self that's always going to get caught in the mind And in that longing for certainty, security, control, and the trust comes from the heart and aligning with the soul self.
The mind really does have its work cut out for itself at a time like this, right? Maybe we can zoom back in on 2025 to 2032 because there is so much shifting and changing, and it is this order-making machine, right? And there is like a lot of disorder. There's a lot of chaos for it to navigate. Maybe that's, yeah. Can you expand upon what you see as happening between 2025 2032? You did say there's a karmic choice point, but like in the day-to-day, what do you see as actually changing? Maybe shaving, maybe things are getting shaved off. What's getting shaved off? But what is changing in your opinion? Is it like education? Is it politics? Is it, like what do you see actually shifting through this time?
Well, that's what's extraordinary. All the forms that we've known that have been built out of these paradigms of the past are deconstructing. I mean, we're seeing that everywhere. And I think that's a part of what can be unsettling for people is seeing our educational systems, our healthcare systems, our political systems, everything deconstructing. But it needs to, when you have this larger arc of understanding our history of evolution of consciousness and where we are now as we're at this critical point of moving into ascending consciousness, it means all the forms upon which we build our society, our global community will need to change to reflect the new cosmology of the Aquarian age, to reflect this new understanding of moving out of power over paradigms back into collaboration, cooperation, the awareness of our interconnectedness with all that is, coming back to living from the heart and not the mind. And I think one of the things that's significant as we moved into the Kali Yuga, this time of lower level of consciousness, we became more right brain dominant, left brain dominant. We had been right brain dominant until the development of written language. And then we became increasingly more left brain dominant. The left brain is that part of us that can analyze and critique and explore, but it tends to operate out of a sense of separation, self and other, self and object. It tends to operate out of that analytical way of thinking and rational thought and logic. It's the right brain that is more relational, empathic, holistic, sees how everything is interwoven and interconnected. So I believe one of the shifts that we're going to see, and we're already seeing it, I was a neuropsychologist for a while, and it's really evident that we're beginning to experience more of a movement back into a balance of left brain and right brain ways of thinking and knowing. And that's guiding us through some of the shifts that we're in. And I think it's also connected with reintegrating more of the balance of the sacred masculine and the sacred feminine. So a lot of the age of Aquarius is about getting out of these polarities back into balance, back into harmony, back into this integration of these different aspects of ourselves to come into wholeness.
Yeah, I mean, I've got people in the community that literally have been chiming in terms of how much is coming on for them in terms of extrasensory perceptions at this time as well as they step more and more into the. And again, back to the question. I mean, it's also like that can add even more uncertainty as well because it's like, what is happening to me? Like it gets layered on at a time like this.
Well, I believe in ancient times we were telepathic. I mean, the ancient shamans and medicine people were just attuned to the plants, and the plants would tell them their medicine. And we had that ability to access wisdom, knowledge, because of our openness to our connections to the cosmos, to the earth. When we got caught in this time of lower level of consciousness and then disconnection, we ended up blocking off and losing those capacities. But all of that's starting to come back now. And there's a gift to that. I mean, I think it can be unsettling for people, but it really is that, again, that realization that we're interconnected with all that is. Everything is conscious. So we can commune. When I teach astrology, I guide my students in how to do shamanic journeys to the planets and the stars so that they're telling us who they are, what they're about, what their meaning is, how they're guiding us in this time. We have that capacity to come back into communion, into connection, into relationship. But it can be unsettling for people because it also means the veils between the worlds are thinner and we're more sensitive to the energies in the collective consciousness and the collective unconsciousness. So we're all feeling more and more the energies and emotions around us. And that can be unsettling. And we have to keep coming back to center, keep finding ways to ground and to clear what's not ours so that we're not just being overwhelmed by the energies and emotions around us that we're more and more sensitive to.
Hey there, Lumen Beings. As Heather's talking about all the shifts and how important it is to ground at this particular moment in time, I wanted to offer and just remind you guys that the Inspired Evolution here is in partnership with earthing.com and Clint Ober's incredible work. Earthing is incredible medicine because it gives you the ability to drop all the charges that cause inflammation in your body, which is the root cause of most diseases, according to Clint Ober, who came on the podcast and is the founder of Earthing and that movement and that medicine, and responsible for bringing it to the West. Naturally, the best way to earth and ground is to go put your bare feet in the earth, spend some time in nature, and just, allow the electron ion charge that you carry throughout the day to just discharge back into the earth. Unfortunately, we don't always get the opportunity to do that, so they have created some products at earthing.com that can support you. You get 10% off all products if you use the discount code INSPIRED. And my favorites are, there's a mat underneath my table here, which enables me to, even while I'm doing these episodes and there's all this, light work and all this sort of stuff happening from all the lights and camera and studio, all the electrons that pour off that can just go back to the earth and get grounded, and it keeps me grounded whilst I'm doing my work indoors. Also, you can get one for your bed at home. It's one of my favorites because you're going to be sleeping for 8 hours. Legitimately, you're grounding while you sleep. An incredible, incredible tool for your health and wellness and to ground. So if you want to find out more, make your way across. I'll put a link in the description below to earthing.com, and don't forget, use the discount code INSPIRED for 10% off as our partnership with earthing.com to support you on your journey. Back to the episode. I love that. Can I ask you some questions about that? I mean, the planets and connecting to them and their own, like building your own relationship directly with them. Because I find that incredibly enriching and beautiful and fascinating. Can I start with can I ask you about Pluto? Because let's take a planet, for example. Like Pluto is feared as this planet of death. But what is Pluto really through your lens of awareness?
So I don't talk about my chart publicly, but if I looked at my chart from a traditional astrology perspective, I have all the malefic planets in the most challenging aspects with my personal planets. So
perfect.
It's really tough. Wait a minute.
I was in for an easy one this time round.
But it's really helped me to understand the gifts of these planets that are so often feared or seen as difficult or challenging. For me, Pluto is the planet that guides us in how to be in this journey of transformation, to go into the underworld, to go through this time of change, death, rebirth, to emerge in the true gold of who we are. It's the planet of alchemy. And it's why, and I really love evolutionary astrology, which is about how do we attune to our soul self and how that's reflected in the chart and how that can guide us in living our lives consciously. But Pluto also is the planet that collectively is showing us our collective journey of evolution of consciousness. So as Pluto has moved into Aquarius, it's saying now is the journey of transformation into the Aquarian energy. It's guiding us in what we need to let go of to move into new ways of being and showing us how to move through that process of life, death, rebirth without fear. All the ancient mystery schools taught when we realize we're soul selves having this human experience, but we're beings of infinity, then we no longer fear death. We see it as this transition and transformation, an ongoing path of growth and evolution and discovery, and learning more and more how to live from love and wisdom. And that's how Pluto guides us. Can I say another one?
Yeah, I was going to ask about Neptune as well, but please, you tell me another one. I want to go through the outer planets if possible. Yeah.
So one I'm very passionate about is Saturn.
Oh, yeah, as you should be. Go on.
Because Saturn is seen as this planet of mortality, constriction. It's aligned with lead.
Tough love. Yeah.
And part of what I love is not only journeying to the planets to get a sense of their meaning and messages from them, but also I love what I learned in my herbal training about the doctrine of signatures and the law of correspondences. So a planet, like a plant, will tell you a lot of its meaning and its medicine by how it moves, what it's composed of, what its color is, how its orbit operates.
Sorry to interrupt here for just a sec, but sorry. But it's kind of like when you go into the forest and they do dietas, right, on certain plants with the shamans. Like there'll be a plant that like is really tall and then really spiky, and it like they dieta on the plant for like 10, 20, 30 days, and it'll be like, that's the qualities you end up imbuing within your energetic architecture, right? Like it'll help you with your strength and integrity, but also defend your field. Like, sorry, but is that?
That's exactly right. Like the plants.
And let me derail you, by the way. Sorry, I just thought that was it just clicked for me. Yeah.
The plants and herbs that are related to the energy of the sun are all bright yellow. They're the plants that can support us in moving out of depression and out of times where we're really feeling caught in the darkness of our own depression or struggles. The plants that relate to the energies of the moon are white and often grow in the shadows and in the moist places. So it's like the plants are telling us who they are and what they're about. And I believe that's true with the planets. So here we have Saturn, who is our outermost visible planet, right at the cusp of visible reality and invisible reality. In its composition, it's less dense than water. So Saturn is not this planet of heaviness and constriction. And Saturn, I believe, is the shaman who knows how to move between the worlds, who guides us in how to come from the invisible realms into form, but how to hold that lightly. And it was in ancient myths understood as the god of the sweet waters, the god of wisdom. So I think what's happened in the patriarchal period is we've projected onto these planets out of our own trauma, out of our own lower level of consciousness. And one of the things that I'm passionate about is we have to clear a lot of those projections onto the planets as we move into the age of Aquarius. I think we need to rename a lot of the planets and not have them named after Roman gods and goddesses and caught in Greek and Roman mythology, but to really reclaim their deeper meaning and wisdom and how they can guide us now into these new paradigms and new ways of being.
Would you rename Saturn to the shaman, or what would you rename Saturn to? Have you given it some thought?
I love that Saturn, and this is where I think as we're moving into the age of Aquarius, we can reclaim some of those remnants of ancient wisdom to guide us into these new ways of understanding and being. And in ancient Sumer, Saturn was Enki, and that was the god of the sweet waters who really guides us in how to live in this realm. And I think that's a beautiful name for Saturn.
Oh, I love it. That has a vibe. I can feel it. Can I ask you about Neptune? What does Neptune offer? I was going to say the baggage around drowning in our illusions, but what does Neptune, in your opinion?
Well, it is this watery, gaseous planet and I think the outermost planets are very significant because they are in that realm beyond our visible reality. And they are the transpersonal planets. They are the great transformational energies that are guiding us. Uranus is this planet that doesn't follow the normal astronomical rules about how a planet should move and how it should be aligned on its axis. And it's the planet then that teaches us how to break free of conventional ways of being and to follow our own unique path. Neptune is this gaseous giant that's speaking to us about opening to mystical ways of knowing and being, letting go of that need for everything to be solid and clear and certain, but to open to these other ways of knowing that are about our intuition and our spiritual ways of knowing and understanding, that whole mystical realm.
Yeah, there's something that I can feel as you're sharing that about like water and mysticism. Like there's an interesting sort of, it's like a particular brand of mysticism. I don't want to say brand, but I don't know what else word to use. Energetic of mysticism that it's offering in terms of its watery self. Am I feeling into it the way that you're suggesting and invite people into it?
Well, if you realize, and I love Veda Austin's work and her exploration of the
How do you
consciousness.
not? Sorry, yeah, go on.
We're 80% water. Our source is coming from the oceans, from the waters. There's water in the cosmos. So I think Neptune's also reminding us of our connection with source and coming from the deep waters, and how that consciousness that moves within us as well as is all around us can remind us of who we truly are.
Can I ask, I'll ask about Jupiter and then I'll ask my question. So Jupiter in your awareness?
Jupiter is this, again, one of our largest planets, and it is such a protector for our solar system. So as comets or meteors come into our solar system, Jupiter will catch them in its orbit and keep them. That's why we have the asteroid belt. It will keep them from coming further into the solar system and impacting the Earth and harming us. So I really see Jupiter as this gaseous giant planet that is our great protector and our guide. And I believe that Jupiter also carries that energy of helping us trust that we are held, we are guided, we are not alone. We've got that energy that is there for us, supporting us, and is so bright and visible in the night sky.
Do you mind if I take you through the inner planets as well? Because I'm just completely fascinated by this now. Can we do Mars?
So Mars and Venus, I'm also very concerned that we reclaim their deeper meaning, because we see Mars, now named after the Roman god of war, as carrying this energy of the hero on the journey to conquer, to achieve his ends, the warrior. And in reality, Mars in its journey starts from its conjunction with the sun. And I believe Mars in its essence, its archetypal meaning, is about our exploration of our uniqueness, our the way in which we're on this adventure in this human incarnation. Who am I? What are my gifts? What is my uniqueness? Mars comes to its moment of transformation at its brightest when it is directly opposite the sun. This is the part of Mars' journey where it suddenly realizes, oh, I'm not on this hero's journey of separation and individuation and on my own path. I've always been connected to Source. I'm always in relationship with the sun. Now I'm coming to this great realization that this whole journey I've been on is about discovering my gifts to bring them back into connection, into community, to be of service to others. And then that second half of Mars' journey is the return back to the connection with the sun. So it's such a different perspective.
Yeah, it's almost got the frequency of the prodigal son a little bit in there as well. Yeah.
And one of the more modern archetypes that would fit with Mars is Frodo.
Frodo. You're right.
Learning through his experiences, discovering his gifts, growing in wisdom to bring those gifts back in service.
Oh, wow. Well, it really does reshape the entire narrative when you change the name and the archetype. That's because that really just the entire story and the baggage shifts as you start to rename the planet, which I'm in awe of where we're at in this conversation, to be honest. Just, just how much more interpersonal the relationship with the planets and the stars you're inviting us into, rather than buying into other people's mythologies around the stars, which is a great way marker. Don't get me wrong. I mean, we're stand on the shoulders of giants, but then ultimately it's, there's that old saying, it's like the finger's pointing to something, but don't look at the thing. It's like, don't look at the finger, look at the thing it's pointing to, yeah.
And I think that's where, for me, understanding the astrological ages and how the energies of those ages shape our cosmology, and to think of it as part of our journey to explore those different energies, those different cosmologies. But what's happened is, as we really moved into the Kali Yuga in the Age of Aries and those power over paradigms, we got stuck there. And a lot of that cosmology and energy carried over through the Age of Pisces. And that's what we're needing to clear and release now, which I think is a lot of the meaning of Neptune's conjunction with Saturn in Aries. But just to finish out with Venus,
yeah,
I love the dance of Venus in the sky. And the oldest known myth that we have, the oldest known written myth, is the myth of Inanna coming out of ancient Sumer, probably dating back in its oral tradition to at least 3000 BCE. And it's the story of Inanna, queen of heaven, the beautiful Venus in the evening sky. And she goes on this journey of realizing that she wants to reconnect with her lost sister who's in the underworld. But it's really a story of how we reclaim the lost parts of ourselves by daring to go into this underworld journey, to go through that time of transformation. And Inanna goes through this death rebirth to emerge transformed in a new sense of self, a new sense of identity, to then be in the morning sky for 9 months until she disappears from view again, now in her superior conjunction, moving behind the sun to commune with the stars, to reflect on who she is, what her journey's been about, to come back as an evening star. So it's such a powerful story of Venus's wisdom and meaning being about how are we in right relationship with ourselves, with each other, with the cosmos. And this journey of Inanna, not like in the later story of Persephone and Demeter, where Persephone gets abducted into the underworld. Inanna hears the call of the great below. She hears the call of the great below and sets out.
There's much more grace in that.
Well,
yeah.
and you, when you were in your crisis, realizing this job I'm in is not right for me in my moment of hearing that voice, it was like hearing the call of the great below. Dare to be on this path of transformation. You don't know where it's going to lead, but it's your own alchemical journey to come in to the truth of who you are, your true self.
And there's that trust we were discussing earlier. Yeah. Mercury and the Earth, then, while we're here. Yeah.
So I see Mercury as really carrying the energy of that Egyptian Neteru Thoth, the wise one, the magician. The Mercury moves in and out of its connection with the sun. I think it's the messenger, the guide, helping us connect back to the wisdom of the sun, of our star, reflecting the wisdom of the cosmos, guiding us back into that remembrance of that deeper wisdom, to not get caught in our minds, but to realize our connection with Source. And the Earth, she's in this orbit between Venus and Mars.
Yeah.
We're in this dance, really honoring the sacred feminine and the sacred masculine, honoring what it means to be in right relationship with ourselves, each other, all that is, and yet also on this journey of exploration and discovery of who are we uniquely meant to be to bring our gifts into service, in community, in this incarnational form. So that's kind of the dance that the Earth is in its own experience as we come here and incarnate to really work those energies of the sacred feminine and the sacred masculine.
Wow. At this moment in the conversation, I'm having my mind blown a little bit. A little bit. But just feeling into how much of the narrative of the hero's journey and our relationship potentially with Mars, as you described it, and sort of the journey out and the return home, and just, it's about learning the return. But how much, even in all the stories that we see, Touchwood, even, Hollywood, Bollywood, like there's so much of that narrative arc, which is the patriarchal narrative arc, right? It's that masculine story that is everywhere, that underlines like even the way organizations, and then recognizing that Venus has her own mythology and her own story, like you mentioned before, the morning star and then the evening star, and it's like a whole rich vein of myth story that is equally as potent, but we don't access that narrative arc, and yet it's equally as prominent if we just access it. And maybe, well, not maybe, and I think that's what's coming into right relation in my mind, and maybe that's that Aquarian, like, it's got that masculine, feminine both, and maybe we'll see more narrative arcs like this coming through, and maybe it's worth studying Venus and her story and how she does it. As you described earlier. Am I making sense? Sorry, I'm having a revelation.
Beautifully said. It's beautifully said, because I think part of what you're tapping into, which is so important, is the Mars journey is that outer exploration, that through our experiences and through our adventures, we're discovering who we are and what our gifts are in order to bring that back in service, in community. The Venus journey, the intense part of the Venus journey is the inner work, is that willingness to go into the underworld of our own unconscious and what we've split off, or what trauma we have, or what lost parts of ourselves are buried within us, to reclaim them, rediscover them, to emerge. And when Venus emerges from that inferior conjunction, when interestingly enough, she's between the Earth and the Sun and disappears from view, when she emerges, that's when she's at her brightest. That's the transformational moment for Venus. I've dared to do this inner work, to go into the underworld, to reclaim the lost parts of myself, to go through that death of my old identity into a new identity, to emerge in the light of my true self.
And this is what you're referring to, the similar journey that you and I had participated on at different points in time, follow more of this narrative arc. And yeah, very, very interesting in terms of the place that we are at now. And I guess many people I'm projecting on people that are listening in, but probably feel this call inwards, this time to transform and shift. And yet our modus operandi has always been this sort of Mars-like nature. We've been programmed for this masculine journey. And yet we're trying to do this Venetian, can I call it Venetian? Venus-like dance, Venus dance. And it's not what you're expecting it to be, but it is the way through. And again, we're back to trust. There seems to be a theme in this episode.
Yes, absolutely. But you're right. It means being willing to let go of the patriarchal paradigms that are very much about the Mars journey as a journey, the hero's journey of separation and individuation, and of mastery and of conquering and of achieving. And we forget the deeper meaning of that Mars journey, which is the deeper understanding of the hero's journey, which is that transformation of realization. I've always been in connection, and I'm meant to be in service to community. We reshaped it in the patriarchal paradigm into this linear path of we just keep going further and further out in discovery and separation and individuation and my own efforts to master, conquest, achieve whatever I want to achieve, no matter what the consequences on anyone else.
So thank you so much for explaining all of that, because there's so much richness in there. In terms of, relationship, building our own relationship and dynamic. There is this relationship zooming back out into the ages, where we're moving into this age of Aquarius, and maybe I can't believe I've gotten this far into this conversation, not giving you permission to or asked you about how to really share more about what this age of Aquarius really means and implies for us. But one of the things that I picked up from your videos is, prior to that, we're in the age of Pisces. Prior to that, we're in the age of Aries. And in fact, we've actually moved through Pisces and we're moving into Aquarius, but actually there's still parts of us that are hooked into a lot of the Aries stuff. And I think you mentioned it just before. That's what you think this current conjunction with Saturn and Neptune and sort of moving through 0 degrees Aries is actually helping us sort of effervesce out. I keep using that word. Yeah, I just want to, I found that completely fascinating, because I'm still in my mind, transitioning from Pisces to Aquarian and just trying to understand Aquarius. But then obviously you've got this much broader lens. I should just give you the floor and stop talking.
And you're exactly right. We moved into the age of Aries, which is ruled by Mars. And what's sad is we got caught in that less conscious expression of Mars. So it did become Mars as the warrior getting caught in war, power over, efforts to control and be in that path of conquest. And then we moved into the age of Pisces, where we were meant to reclaim that mystical remembrance, that Neptune, that we're a part of the oneness of all that is. That was the message of Buddha. That was the message of Christ. But what happened is the energies of Aries carried over into the energy of the age of Pisces, so that then these spiritual teachings got encoded and institutionalized in religions that then became about doctrines, beliefs, power over. If you're not aligned with my religion, that we're going to go to war with each other. And we had religious wars, we had persecutions of those who weren't on the same path of belief. That was such a distortion of the mystical spiritual roots of the teaching of the age of Pisces, which are about come back into that awareness that the divine is within you. We're all interconnected. We're all a part of the oneness of all that is. So I think as we're now on this cusp of ending the age of Pisces, we're moving into the age of Aquarius. We're needing to clear those out of balance paradigms of the age of Aries that have continued to control us. We need to reclaim the gifts of the age of Pisces to move more fully into the age of Aquarius.
Inspired souls, if you're liking this conversation, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and a like here on YouTube, and also join in on the conversation below. I'd love to hear from you in the comments section. What are you taking away from Heather's conversation today? And if you've got any questions of her for the future as well, leave them in the comments below. Back to Heather in today's episode. I've got a trippy question. Is it a gathering of like moving into like the qualities of the new, or is it a shedding of the old? And the reason I ask this is we recently had Alberto Villoldo on the podcast, and I know his the Body of Light. Has
Healing
informed,
Body program.
Yeah, he's amazing. Touchwood, and we share that felt love for his work. He came on the podcast and he was referring to how something as simple as Palo Santo, when we used to use it as a smudge stick. Sorry, I promise this will make sense in just a sec. I know it sounds like I've just ventured off super far, but when you light the Palo Santo and the smudge stick, in his awareness, the wood that is the timber actually is all it's sun energy and sun information that's coalesced in rings from all the revolutions that the Earth's made around the sun, and it's turned light into matter, right, using the elemental forces. And so then he goes, place your intention of what you'd like to clear, like, into the object, and then through the energy of light and heat, you can actually return it back. You know, from anything that's sort of become stuck and coalesced, you're unwinding it and giving it back, right? And allowing things to return, touchwood. And there is this really trippy thing in the zodiac, which is everything goes one way, but then the precessional cycle goes the other way.
Mm.
Yeah. And so that hopefully brings a bit more frame to my question in terms of, are we potentially gathering, or are we potentially unwinding as we're going through these precessional cycles? Does my question make sense?
Oh, it totally makes sense. And I think it is that part of the mystery that we're in this dance of a cyclical process. And the cycle of the movement of the planets is different than our visual experience of the movement of the stars as we go through the precessional cycle. And they seem to move backwards 1 degree every 72 years. But I think it's speaking to how we are in these cycles that take us through ascending and descending consciousness. We are working and reworking similar things, but I think it's a spiral growth of evolution where we're ever changing, but we're also moving through similar patterns from the past. And now, as we're in the age of Aquarius, we're moving into new forms, new ways of being, but we're also reclaiming ancient wisdom and releasing what's blocked us from that remembrance of what we once knew. So it is this dance of our releasing, dissolving, but also expanding and moving into new ways of being.
Can I ask you, Heather, what would have been the highest expression of the age of Pisces in your awareness?
I really believe it was meant to honor the gifts, if we could have claimed the higher consciousness of the age of Aries, which is who am I in my unique self-expression as a fractal expression of cosmic consciousness. But then with the age of Pisces, but we're all a part of this sea of cosmic consciousness. We're each just a drop of that expression of the oneness of all that is. Then it balances our awareness of how we deal with our uniqueness, but hold it in that awareness that we are part of the interconnectedness of all that is. We're never separate. And we are this soul self having this momentarily unique experience to then dissolve back into cosmic consciousness in that oneness.
And can I ask, what do you see as being the highest expression of can I start with what do you think the shadow aspect of the age of Aquarius could be?
Technology and staying caught in this idealization that we're in with technology and merging with AI and losing our humanity.
That's not a small one. Wow, this transhumanism conversation that's being had at the moment.
Exactly. And here's, I see our development of technology as the training wheels to remember the capacity of our consciousness. I mean, what you see when you experience some of what these ancient cultures knew and the advanced technology they had, it was coming from that understanding of quantum energy and of the capacity of our understanding of frequency, our understanding of consciousness, of light and sound. So we've developed these technologies that are still coming out of this power over control mentality. But even something like the internet, I think, has been our way of connecting around the globe until we remember how to be telepathic. And then we don't need machines. We don't need the internet. We'll have that capacity within our consciousness.
In a more organic biological form
And
of
in a more
manifestation.
advanced way than technology could ever achieve.
Wow. Fascinating. And so in its highest expression, is that leading into what the age of Aquarius, in your opinion, takes us into, like the light of the age of Aquarius? It's hard to project. Obviously, it's a very long time, but yeah.
I love that the constellation of Aquarius is the water bear, pouring the waters, the living waters and the waters of wisdom to the earth. And I believe that the age of Aquarius is about coming back into that connection with the wisdom of the cosmos, coming back into balance, into harmony, remembering our interconnectedness with all that is, coming back into a way in which we retain our sense of uniqueness and diversity, but we hold that in the context of community. So my phrase to try to summarize the meaning of the age of Aquarius is the sovereignty of the self in the sanctity of community, in unity with cosmic consciousness.
Can you say that again?
The sovereignty of the self in the sanctity of community, in unity with cosmic consciousness.
Wow.
So we hold that sense of our uniqueness, that we're each a fractal expression of cosmic consciousness. And if we don't listen to our soul self and express our unique gifts, that's lost to the cosmos. And we're meant to take that responsibility to be who we uniquely are, but to remember the beauty, the sacredness of being in community and in right relationship with all that is, to then remember that we always are and always have been a part of the oneness of all that is, and this sea of cosmic consciousness that is within us and all around us.
Supporting us, guiding us, nurturing us, inviting us, yeah, growing us. Oh,
Yeah.
I love that. I really, really love that. There's yeah, I mean, it's really inspiring for what's possible in this time as we're moving through it. Here's just a quick little share with yourself. There was this really, I don't know if you've seen it. There's, is it Outlander? I think it's like this Netflix kind of show or something, and it's got at its central piece, it's like Stonehenge is like this focal point in the story, and this lady, she lives in modern day time, but she apparently hangs out at Stonehenge. I haven't watched it, by the way. I've just had friends tell me about it. And she goes and she ends up touching Stonehenge at this particular moment in time, cosmologically, and she slips into like a different time. It turns out to be a time-traveling time portal type sort of situation. And it's fascinating, and she tries to get back and so on and so forth. Anyway, my friend, she was watching it with her friends. And after watching an episode, they all sat around, had a cup of tea, and they had this really interesting conversation, which was like, if you could go back to any point in time, where would you go to? You know, and I was like, oh my God, this is why we're friends. That is such a great question. And they all went around and they all had their share. And interestingly, I found my friend's response quite profound in that she said, I think this is the time. Like, if I could ever go back to any moment in time, like, there is just so much going on right now. And there was this, I don't want to sound like this, but this hint of fear in terms of like, do we make it, do we not make it, like sort of thing as a species, which, you know, I don't want to really put on the podcast, but here I am saying that. But anyway, but it was, you could hear it in her tone of voice. But like, what a time to come back to. And that has really left a mark on me, just the way she said that. I was like, actually, yeah, it is a very, very, very interesting time, because there is that, you know, you've got your birth chart, and some people even look at charts of when people leave, you know, and it's like your soul kind of chose to hey, like, I can come in at this time and, you know, do some work. And like, what an incredible time with all this uncertainty, all this transitioning. We're literally between two ages. So much is shifting and happening right now. I mean, it really is quite a remarkable time. Your opinion?
I absolutely agree with that. I think this is such a profound time to be on the planet. And, you know, those who are tuned into the other realms say souls were lined up to be here for this time. I mean, it's such a critical transition time and karmic choice point for humanity. I do think the earth and how we, as humans on this planet, handle this transition is impacting our galaxy. I think this is such a critical time for awakening and healing and moving into higher consciousness. And I think many of us have chosen to incarnate in this time to experience this, but also I think many of us have chosen to be here to support the shift, to be holding that remembrance of who we are, who we're capable of being, to support us all in coming back to the heart and trusting in this transformation that we're in, to move through this evolutionary leap into radically new ways of being.
And it's a deep time, because I think in one of your videos I heard you say that, like, you know, we're even like on a DNA cellular levels, like actively clearing out some of the stuff that we as a species picked up 12,000 years ago.
Yeah, we're changing on every level. And I do believe, I love that image that the Peruvian shamans have of our becoming Homo luminous ones. We're becoming beings of light. And that is about being in form, but not being bound by form, the way we have been in these last 5,000 or 6,000 years. It's about really understanding the fluidity of time and form and space and the capacity of our consciousness and our capacity to once again feel that oneness with the sacredness of all of life and being a part of the cosmos and interacting again with our galactic friends and our community and the energies of the earth and the other realms and other dimensions. We're capable of so much with our consciousness as we can move through this transition time and reclaim what we're capable of.
Heather, I love your YouTube channel. I'm going to put a link to it in the show notes below for people to go check out. There's a myriad of offerings on your website, which I don't think people will be aware of, because your work actually transcends quite a few different domains of like I'll just say that and let the curiosity sort of brew for people to go check it out. But I'll put a link to your website as well. Cheekily, I'm not sure if I meant to mention this, but there is a book in the pipeline, no pressure, that we're looking forward to receiving next year, God willing, touch wood. Anything else that's important for if people wanted to connect with Heather? Are those the main places to get in touch?
Absolutely.
Yeah, perfect. Awesome. Just as we start to wrap up, there is this really interesting thing as well, because the current astrology that we look at, you said in the Age of Aries has sort of, I'm not sure if I wholeheartedly understand this, so maybe you can help correct me, is we've currently, the way astrology is being mapped and the way we're interacting with it was sort of accurate in the age of, as in an age gone, was it Aries? Whereas now it's more of like a reference, but maybe this is where Vedic astrology actually maps directly onto the astronomy and astrology no longer maps to the astronomy. I'm a little bit lost here. Can you explain what's going on there, please?
Yes, that's such a critical point. So we did lock our tropical zodiac chart in time in the age of Aries and no longer saw the movement of precession. Again, the precessional cycle means that our perspective of the stars moves 1 degree every 72 years. Vedic astrology and sidereal astrology track the movement of precession. However, they still are arbitrary systems with certain degrees for each sign when the constellations don't fit those parameters. So part of what I am really moving into more and more deeply is visual astrology, where we reclaim our connection with the sky and the wholeness of the sky instead of collapsing everything as we do in the tropical zodiac onto the ecliptic, but how we can also then relate to the sky more directly and experience where the planets are actually in the sky in a more imagic, poetic, mythic way. So instead of, for example, Mars right now is in the stars of Leo, conjunct the royal star Regulus. So we don't just say Mars is in Leo, we say Mars is connected to the heart of the lion. And the meaning of that star, which is about living from the heart with courage. Or what does it mean if the moon is between the horns of the bull of Taurus? Or as we're moving into this solstice time, Jupiter will be conjunct the sun in the upraised arm of Orion. Orion, symbolic of Osiris. The upraised arm of Orion is about resurrection. Order triumphs over chaos. We move back into enlightenment. Jupiter and the sun in the upraised arm of Orion saying, have faith. You're being guided through this transition into resurrection, into new life, new ways of being. 2032, June of 2032, when Uranus and Saturn go conjunct, which is about new forms, new paradigms, upraised arm of Orion. So I believe as we're being guided by the cosmos, all these shifts that are happening in 2025, as we move out of the Kali Yuga, we go through this 7-year karmic choice point transition time to come to June of 2032 with Uranus and Saturn in the upraised arm of Orion. Now we can move into these new ways of being and co-create a new world together. If we awaken, heal, and move with these currents of the cosmos through this time of transformation.
Heather Ensworth. Thank you for today's Thank you so much for sharing yourself so abundantly here today. And I mean, gratitude pales. It doesn't really even scratch the surface. I mean, I think people are aware I was shifting as you were sharing things. Like, this has been a complete transmission. I mean, and as we can reflect on, your own journey and, how everything you're sharing on is built upon your life's work. So, yeah, I mean, thank you so much for sharing yourself, your time and energy here today, of course, but also really grateful for you. I mean, even what you just described, like bringing us back into, just this right relation in so many different ways, and our place in the universe, and just supporting us so lovingly and nurturingly into grounding back into that. I mean, I'm grateful for you. Thank you, Heather. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for inviting me to be a part of this conversation. Thank you for listening to your own inner knowing, following your soul's path, having the courage to live from your heart, to be doing the work you're doing now, which is so important for so many of us. Thank you.
Touch wood. This whole masculine feminine piece and Mars, and it's because there's so much, and I didn't even want to say that, but like there are so many people in their branding, in their work, in their marketing, in Hollywood. It's just all that Mars male, and not to say there's anything wrong with Mars, but it's like our propensity to overlean into that space when Venus has an equal and just as important narrative structure. That the myth of that alone, let alone the energetics of it, the myth of it alone can rewrite and inform so much. Like, I mean, I left most of my brains on the table, but it was great. My heart opened up completely to what a feminine narrative, looks like and can be, and like how important it is. And the fact that we're actually living some of that already out. Like that happened to you in your your transformation. It happened to me. It's like I'm doing something and it's like, oh, it's not right. And the squeeze, and you go away, and then it's like you start to emerge and it's bright, touch wood. That was so helpful, Heather. I can't begin to tell you.
Exactly. But it's really, again, reshaping our understanding of the sacred feminine, that it's not just about receptivity. It's about the power of creativity and doing that inner work to emerge in who we truly are.
It's much more inwards. Whereas Mars has this, I've got to go, like Frodo goes out on the journey and discovers bits of himself internally along the way. Whereas Venus, I could feel very much as like go inwards, and then your outwards will start to emerge and shift, and hence the brightness, like it's.
Exactly.
Yeah, a really, really huge point. I mean, and I think also important to have in one's awareness and psyche as we go through this shift, because naturally I think more and more people, especially for those of us that are coaches, guides, therapists, healers, whatever you want to call us, workers, those in service, let's call us that, because they'll probably see more and more of this archetype showing up for the people that are coming online. I think it's just really healthy to have that. So you've got a reference point, a bit of a map.
Yeah, and that's what's beautiful about the myth of Inanna. It guides you through the whole process. And part of what I love, I mean, I couldn't go through it all, but in the myth, in the story, so Venus emerges from the underworld And then she encounters her partner, Mars, Dumuzi, and says, you need to go. The spirits of the underworld come and say to him, you need to go do your inner work now to come back into relationship in a new way.
She kind of initiates him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, wow. That's interesting. And then does he goes away and returns?
Mm-hmm. And then they reconnect. And they reconnect in the sky, but now in a new way. They've both done the inner work and now come back in more balance and in a deeper relationship.
It seems like is it the myth of Inanna is from the Sumerian culture?
Mm-hmm.
The Sumerian culture speaks really deeply to you, it seems.
It's really the remnants of the age of Taurus that we still have. And the myth actually describes the shifts that are happening as we're moving towards the age of Aries. But it gives us that glimpse of some of that more ancient wisdom that we don't have earlier written records before those final years of the age of Taurus, but they give us a glimpse of what they were still retaining from the past.
Right. Very interesting, because that's like then earth, fire, water, wind, and then that earth frequency of Taurus obviously would have started writing things down for the first time-ish, maybe. I don't know. But yeah, it can sort of, I see what you're doing is like, the wind, and we're back in a wind sign, and there's that correlation between the two spaces. It is so fascinating to play at the vantage that you of astrology I love your fascination, and I feel really honored to have had this conversation with you today. Really, Heather. Yeah, it's a lot of questions that I've been carrying for a while got answered. Like, I'm really excited to find out more about the Yugas, like it's just a fascination of mine, and to feel someone of your caliber sort of leaning into it, it's like, wow, this is such a treat, such a treat.
I love being in conversation with you. You really think and listen at such a deep level. And I did feel like we were in this space where so many levels were active at once.
Oh, touch wood. Thank you so much. Inspired Soul, you made it through to the end of another incredible podcast. Thank you so much for your inspirations to evolve. It is such an honor to be your brother walking this path by your side. You've obviously watched this video all the way through to the end, so you genuinely like this video, so please do give it a like and a thumbs up. It genuinely helps. And once again, to all of you that are subscribed to the channel, a massive, massive, massive thank you. Everything you see around here is potentiated, is made possible by your subscription to this podcast. Thank you so much for your incredible love and your support. To all of you that haven't yet subscribed, please do take a moment. Yeah, as I'm saying the word subscribe, the button below is lighting up in the colors of the Inspired Evolution. Please hit that subscribe button, hit the bell notification icon, join the community, join the movement. Supporting, championing love, positivity, and wisdom like this around the planet. Episodes come out twice a week. And yeah, we absolutely love doing this with you together as a community. On screen now for you to take your journey even further, episodes with other astrologers. So go on, take your pick, make your click, and I'll see you in the next one.